My name is Denise Holloway. I'm 31 years old, and I live alone in a small house on the edge of Brook Hollow Park. I used to be a mother, a wife, a daughter. Now I'm just a memory to the people who should have loved me the most. I raised 3 kids. I loved them more than life itself. I wasn't a perfect mom, but I did my best. Their names are Brandon, Scott, and Natalie. When their father walked out on us 8 years ago, I held everything together. I worked double shifts at a diner, cleaned offices at night, and still came home to help them with their homework. I was always tired, but I smiled for them. They were my world. Things didn't stay hard forever. I started a small cleaning business. It was slow at first, but with time, I got regular clients. People liked my work and told their friends. Eventually, I had a team working under me. I wasn't rich, but I had enough to move us out of our roach-infested apartment and into a little house in Brook Hollow Park. Not fancy, but clean. Safe. Quiet. For a while we were happy. We had movie nights. Pizza Fridays. Road trips every summer, even if it was just to the next town. I did everything for my kids. I made sure they had everything I never had. New shoes for school. Birthday parties. I never let them see me cry when I had to skip dinner so they could eat. But things started to change after Brandon turned 18. He got into a local college and started dating some girl named Jasmine. She was flashy, always carrying expensive purses, and made me feel small whenever she visited. Brandon stopped talking to me the way he used to. I became just mom, someone he tolerated when he needed something. Scott followed a similar path. Got himself a job at a car lot and started buying things like watches and fancy speakers. He acted like I was holding him back, like everything I did for them was now embarrassing. I saw him less and less. Natalie, my baby, stayed with me the longest. She was always sweet, always close. But when she turned 17 and got her first job at a coffee shop, she began to change too. She started hanging out with girls who made fun of me behind my back. I found texts. They called me washed up, and said I was trying too hard to matter. Still, I didn't stop loving them. I cooked for them when they visited. I slipped gas money into their wallets without them knowing. I smiled through the pain. Then I got sick. It started with dizzy spells. Then I began to faint. I lost weight fast. At first, I thought it was the stress. But when my legs gave out at work and I had to be rushed to the hospital, the doctors found it. A rare autoimmune disease. Aggressive. Dangerous. They told me I'd need treatment, lots of rest, and help with daily life. I called my kids. All 3 of them. I told them the truth. I told them I needed help. Brandon didn't answer. I left him a voicemail. Scott said he'd see what he could do, then never showed up. Natalie cried on the phone, but the next day, she blocked me. I tried again and again. Nothing. No one came. I went through chemotherapy alone. My neighbor, Mrs. Elkins, a kind old woman who barely knew me, helped me more than my own children did. Some nights I lay in bed shivering from the pain, too weak to get up, and I just stared at the ceiling thinking, did I fail as a mother? Is this what I deserve? Months passed. I sold my business to pay for my medical bills. The house became quiet. My body weak. My soul even weaker. I thought maybe it would end like this, quiet, forgotten. I made peace with that. Then one day, I got a letter. An old friend from high school, Polly, had passed away. We hadn't spoken in years, but I helped her once when she was going through a hard time. Turns out, she never forgot. She left me her beach house and a chunk of her savings. A surprise will. Her lawyer said she'd never married or had kids. She wanted her blessings to go to someone who showed her real kindness. I couldn't believe it. The beach house was in Southport. A calm, beautiful place. White sand. Blue skies. Peace. I used the money to get better treatment and moved away without telling anyone. I didn't want my kids to come crawling back because they smelled money. I cut off contact. Changed my number. Left no forwarding address. It was time for a new life. Years went by. I got stronger. Healthier. I learned to walk on the beach without wobbling. I learned to breathe without crying. I found peace. I made a small circle of new friends. People who saw me, not just what I could give them. I also rewrote my will. Every cent I now had, every asset, was written to go to a charity for abandoned mothers and sick women with no family support. The house too. Not a single dollar would go to my children. But I planned one last thing. I staged a fake obituary. Quiet. Hidden in a small paper in Brook Hollow Park, where I used to live. A whisper. Not a scream. Just enough to be found. And they did. I saw the photos online. My old neighbor's niece posted them. There they were, Brandon, Scott, and Natalie, standing outside my old house, dressed in black, acting like they cared. Brandon had a lawyer with him. Natalie wore dark sunglasses like she was in mourning. Scott looked impatient. They thought I was gone. They thought they were about to cash in. They didn't know I was watching. I sat in my beach house that morning, sipping coffee, watching the waves crash gently outside my window. And I smiled for the first time in years. But the real twist was just beginning. Later that day, I got a call from the lawyer I had hired for the will. He told me something had happened. Something unexpected. There was a knock at his office door. A man in a suit had shown up, claiming to be acting on behalf of my children. And he wasn't alone. The lawyer, Mr. Dalton, was a quiet man with gray eyes and a careful voice. He called me as soon as the man left his office. "Denise," he said, "I don't want to worry you, but you should know. Someone came in today, saying he represented your children. He asked about the inheritance, claimed they were your next of kin. He said you'd passed and they were entitled to everything you owned." I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at the sea from my window, the waves moving in and out like slow breaths. "Do they know where I am?" I asked finally. "No," he replied. I told them there was a sealed will and that it couldn't be discussed until official verification. But Denise, he wasn't just asking questions. He brought copies of your death notice. He's trying to push for early disbursement. I felt my fingers tighten around the phone. "Let them try," I said. "They want war, I'll give them one." After I hung up, I sat in silence. My old life had come knocking. And I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The next day, I walked into the town library and went to the back, where the old records were kept. I asked for newspapers from Brook Hollow Park dated around the time the obituary was published. I found it. A tiny column. 3 lines. Denise Holloway, 34, of Brook Hollow Park, passed away quietly in her home. No services were held by request. I smiled. That was the bait. I went home and started planning. You see, I wasn't just angry. I was disappointed. My children left me when I needed them most. They didn't call. They didn't visit. Not even a single birthday card. But when they thought there was something to gain, they came running like vultures. So I decided to teach them a lesson. One they wouldn't forget. First, I called Mr. Dalton again. "I want you to prepare a public reading of the will," I said. "But, trust me," I told him. "You'll be reading it to them. But I won't be dead." He paused for a moment. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes," I said. "And make it look real. Include everything. Let them see the amount. Let them dream. Even the beach house? Especially the beach house." He agreed. The will would be read in person at his office in 3 weeks. Invitations were to be sent to Brandon, Scott, and Natalie. I wanted them to have time to plan, to fantasize, to think they were walking into a gold mine. In the meantime, I stayed in Southport, quietly preparing. I closed my social media. I stopped going to town events. I made sure not to speak to anyone from my old life. It had to be perfect. No trail. No loose ends. 3 weeks later, the date came. Mr. Dalton called me in the morning. "They're all here," he said. "Your son Brandon is in a suit. Natalie's got some fancy handbag. Scott brought a notepad, like he's taking notes at a business meeting. They look excited." I told him I'd be there in 10 minutes. But I didn't walk in through the front door. I had rented the office across the hall from Mr. Dalton's, with a clear view into the meeting room. One-way glass. I sat behind the glass and watched. There they were. My children. The ones I had held through fevers. Who I had fed when I couldn't feed myself. Who I stayed up all night for when they were babies. Who I would have died for. Brandon leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. He had a smug grin. Natalie crossed her legs and kept looking at her phone. Scott checked his watch every few seconds. Mr. Dalton walked in, holding a large envelope. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to clarify something. You all understand this will was created recently. You are listed, but things may not be what you expect." Brandon waved him off. "Just get to it, sir." Mr. Dalton opened the will. "To my children Brandon, Scott, and Natalie," he read, "who abandoned me during the hardest time of my life, I leave exactly $1 each. You walked away when I was on my deathbed. You ignored my calls. You left me to rot. So this dollar is a reminder of the value you placed on my life. May it bring you the same comfort you gave me." "None." I saw the room freeze. Scott sat up straight. Natalie stopped blinking. Brandon's jaw actually dropped. Mr. Dalton went on. "To the woman who helped me when I couldn't stand, to the nurses who stayed by my side when my children vanished, and to the mothers who suffer alone, I leave the rest." He then read the list. The beach house. Gone. The 430,000 in savings. Gone. All the jewelry, bonds, and my late friend's legacy. Gone. To charity. Every last dollar. I watched my kids crumble. Brandon stood up and started shouting. "This is fraud. My mom wouldn't do this." Scott looked like he'd swallowed a stone. "She was sick. She didn't know what she was doing." Natalie was crying, real tears, but I couldn't tell if they were for me or the money. Mr. Dalton stayed calm. "She was of sound mind and body. The documents are legally sealed and witnessed." Then Brandon slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't over." He stormed out. Scott followed, silent. Natalie lingered a moment longer. She turned and stared at the door as if she knew, as if she could feel I was close. But she left too. And I sat behind the glass, watching the children I raised fall apart. Still, I didn't cry. Not yet. The next day, something strange happened. A letter arrived at the beach house. No name on it. Just my address. Handwritten. Plain envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence. "We know you're not dead." My hands shook. For the first time in a long time. I was scared. I sat at my kitchen table for nearly an hour, just staring at that one sentence. "We know you're not dead." The words danced on the page like smoke. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might break through my ribs. My hands trembled as I held the envelope again, looking for clues. No return address, no stamp. It had been hand-delivered, which meant someone had been here. To my house. I jumped up and locked the front door, then checked the back. All the windows. Nothing seemed broken or touched. But that only made it worse. They had been close enough to slip a note into my mailbox without making a sound. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the street. Every shadow looked like a person. Every sound made me flinch. I kept replaying the scene at Mr. Dalton's office. Had Natalie seen me through the glass? Was Brandon bluffing when he shouted that it wasn't over? Or had they hired someone to track me down? The next morning, I called Mr. Dalton and told him about the note. "Should I be worried?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. "I'll have a friend look into it," he said. "Private investigator. Discreet. Just in case." "Thanks," I said. "But don't tell them anything. Even if they come back to you. Especially then." "Of course." I hung up and tried to go about my day like nothing had happened. I watered my plants. Took a short walk along the beach. Smiled at my neighbor, Carol, when she waved. But inside I was shaking. I had done this for revenge, to teach a lesson. But maybe I had gone too far. That evening, I went through the trash and burned the note. Every piece of it. I didn't want to keep reminders of fear. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. A few days later, I got another surprise. Carol knocked on my door. She was holding a package. "This came for you," she said. "Left on my porch by mistake. No delivery truck though. Must have been dropped off by hand." My stomach twisted. The box was small, maybe the size of a shoebox. Wrapped in brown paper. No label. No markings. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and opened it slowly. Inside was an old photo. One of me and my kids at the state fair, back when Natalie was still small enough to ride on my hip. We were smiling, faces messy with cotton candy. Under the photo was a note, typed this time. Funny how fast smiles fade when the money does. See you soon. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about greed anymore. They were angry. And someone was close. Too close. I picked up the photo and stared at it. I remembered that day so clearly. Brandon had won a giant stuffed bear for Natalie by throwing a ring over a bottle. Scott had begged for every snack in sight. We had laughed. I had felt proud. Now that same memory felt like a weapon. Later that night, I called Mr. Dalton again. I think they're watching me, I told him. I've already put my guy on it, he said. He's coming down to Southport tomorrow. Don't open the door to strangers. Keep your phone close. I don't want this to get ugly, I said softly. It already is, he replied. After we hung up, I walked through every room in the house, closing the curtains, checking every lock. I sat in the dark again, same spot as before, waiting. But nothing happened. At least not that night. The next day, I met the investigator, Jeremy. He was younger than I expected, maybe in his 30s, clean-shaven with a leather notebook and kind eyes. I'll do a sweep, he said. See if you're being watched. If they planted anything. Cameras. Trackers. Sometimes people use motion sensors near the driveway. That thought chilled me. Jeremy walked the property while I waited inside. 20 minutes later, he came back. You were right to be worried, he said. He held up a tiny black device, no bigger than a thumb. A tracker, he said. Stuck under your car. Professionally placed. I felt dizzy. How long has it been there? I asked. Hard to say. But long enough. My mind raced. They must have followed me from Brook Hollow Park. They knew I wasn't dead. They just didn't know why I faked it, or what I planned next. Jeremy looked at me carefully. You want me to go to the police? I shook my head. Not yet. Truth was, I wanted them to come. I wanted to look them in the eye when they realized they'd lost me for good. I had one more move to make before I was ready for the law. The next day, I packed a small bag. Left the house at dawn. Took back roads. No phones. No credit cards. I went back to Brook Hollow Park. In disguise. Wig. Glasses. Makeup. I just needed to see it for myself. The town hadn't changed much. Same dusty gas station. Same diner I used to work in. But the people looked older. Tireder. I drove past my old house. There were lights on inside. And cars out front. 3 of them. One was Brandon's truck. Another looked like Scott's new ride. And the third, Natalie's little blue coupe. I parked down the street and watched. It was evening. They were all inside. Talking. Arguing. I couldn't hear, but I could see the way their hands moved, the way their bodies leaned forward. They were plotting something. I snapped a few pictures. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The 3 of them, back in the house I bled for, thinking they had a chance to win. But as I was turning to leave, I saw something that froze me in place. A figure stepped out from the back porch. Tall. Dressed in black. Face hidden by a hoodie. They didn't go into the house. They looked right at me. And then they started walking toward my car. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. My heart slammed against my ribs as I threw the car into reverse and sped down the street, tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't look back. Not even once. I didn't need to. Whoever that person was, they weren't just watching anymore. They had seen me. It took me 2 hours to get back to Southport. My hand stayed tight on the wheel the entire time. The night air blew through the open window, but it couldn't cool the fire in my chest. Someone had followed me, or worse, someone had known I'd come. Back at the beach house, I parked 3 streets away and walked the rest of the way on foot, watching for movement, shadows, signs that someone might be nearby. Nothing. No cars that didn't belong. No faces in windows. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I went to Jeremy's hotel. He opened the door in sweatpants and a plain shirt, clearly surprised to see me. "Denise," he said. "What happened?" I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. Then I told him everything. From the tracker on my car to the hand-delivered notes. From the will reading to the man in the hoodie outside my old house. Jeremy listened without interrupting. He didn't flinch. When I finished, he sat back and nodded slowly. "You're being hunted," he said, calm as ever. "Not by amateurs. These people know how to wait. How to pressure without breaking the law. But they're angry now. Desperate. Which means they're going to slip." He reached into his duffel bag and pulled out a small square case. "I'm giving you a burner phone," he said. "Keep it on you. Use it only to call me. And stay out of that house for the next few days. I'll set up motion cams around the property. Check every street camera for signs of who's been following you." "And if they come again?" I asked. His eyes narrowed. "Let them." I stayed at a motel that night. One of those no-frills places with flickering signs and broken vending machines. I laid on the bed, fully dressed, just staring at the ceiling tiles. My mind played through everything. All the birthdays they missed. The night I had my seizure and Natalie hung up because she was too tired. The last hospital visit, where Brandon promised to pick me up, and never came. They had left me behind like I was trash. And now that they thought I was gone, they were fighting each other for the scraps I left. But the scraps were bait. And they were already choking on it. In the morning, Jeremy texted me. "Got something. Meet me at the office." I drove over fast. He was waiting inside, looking at a laptop screen. "Last night, around 3 a.m., someone came up your back steps. Look at this." He clicked play. Grainy footage. Black and white. A tall figure. Hoodie again. Same build. He reached for the door, tried the handle. Locked. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A key. He opened the door and walked right inside. I felt my skin crawl. How did he get a key?" I asked. Jeremy looked at me. "Could be they had a copy. From the old house. Or maybe someone stole it from you." I shook my head. "I changed the locks when I moved in." "Well," he said, "either someone got really lucky, or they've been inside before." I turned away from the screen. My stomach twisted. What did he do once he got in? Jeremy clicked again. "Watch." The man stepped into the house. Calm. Casual. Like he wasn't afraid at all. He walked into the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Looked around. Then pulled something from his pocket and placed it on the table. He walked back out the same way. Jeremy zoomed in on the table. It was a photo. Me. Sitting at the beach. Drinking coffee. Taken from a distance. "They're not just guessing anymore," he said. "They're watching you. Up close." I rubbed my arms. My skin was crawling. "I need to move," I said. "Today. I'll go further south. Change my name again if I have to." Jeremy shook his head. "That's what they want. For you to run. That gives them the power. But we have another option." He pulled out a second folder and placed it on the table. "I did a full trace on all 3 of your kids. Not just their money, but their emails, movements, known friends. All legal. All public records." He opened the folder. Brandon's in deep debt. Owes $72,000 to a construction supplier. Scott's being investigated by the IRS for undeclared income. And Natalie. He turned a page. She's the one who placed the fake death notice. My mouth dropped open. "What?" Jeremy nodded. "She used an anonymous submission. But she made one mistake. She emailed the paper from a temporary account linked to her work IP. When I called pretending to verify, they confirmed it. I couldn't believe it. Natalie had lied to the entire town. Made the world think I was dead. Just so she could get the money faster. And now, she knew I was alive. What do I do?" I whispered. Jeremy looked at me carefully. "You end this. You fight back. Not with fear, but with fire." We made a plan. And I was ready. The next day, I returned to my house. Jeremy had cleared it, scrubbed for bugs, set up motion sensors. I walked back into my kitchen like it was any other day. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I sat at the table, staring at the photo the man had left. Then I took out my own pen and paper. And I wrote a letter. To all three of them. I didn't sign it. I didn't explain anything. Just one line. The dead don't speak, but they do watch. Jeremy mailed them from a nearby town. Then we waited. A week passed. Then another. Quiet. Until one night, I heard a noise. Outside. Movement. I crept to the window and pulled back the curtain an inch. There was Brandon. Standing in the yard. Holding something in his hand. He raised it slowly. Lit it with a match. And threw it at the house. The bottle crashed against the front wall with a sharp pop. Glass shattering. Flames licking up the siding like hungry fingers. It took me half a second to realize what it was. A Molotov. Brandon had thrown a Molotov cocktail at my house. I froze for just a moment, watching the fire crawl up the porch rail like a snake. Then I moved. Fast. I grabbed the fire extinguisher Jeremy had insisted I keep near the door and burst outside. The air was thick with smoke and gasoline. Brandon was still standing there, like he hadn't expected me to actually show myself. His mouth hung open in shock as I pulled the pin and sprayed foam across the flames. He stumbled backward. "Why I'm alive, Brandon," I said, voice low and cold. "Surprise." He looked around like he was trying to decide if he should run or lunge at me. That's when Jeremy appeared from behind the hedge with a camera. "Smile," he said. "You're going viral." Brandon turned white. Then red. "You set me up," he hissed. "You threw fire at your mother's house," Jeremy said, calm as ever. "We didn't have to set anything up. You did it all yourself." I didn't wait to hear more. I walked back into the house, slammed the door, and locked it behind me. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. I'd let myself believe they couldn't sink lower. I was wrong. Jeremy called the police. They came fast. Lights flashing, voices raised. Brandon tried to talk his way out of it, but the camera footage didn't lie. They took him away in cuffs, and I watched through the blinds as he screamed at the officers. "She's supposed to be dead. She's supposed to be gone." The words echoed in my head. Supposed to be dead. Like I was just a tool to them. A life to use up. A body to bury. Someone to forget once the money dried up. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still watching. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Natalie. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Mom. I don't know what's going on. Scott and we didn't know Brandon would do something like that. He's spiraling. He's angry, but we weren't involved in that. I swear. Please call me back." I didn't believe her. Later that night, I checked my cameras. At 2 a.m., someone else came to the house. This time it was Scott. He didn't throw anything. He just stood at the edge of the yard for a long time. Staring. Like he couldn't believe I was alive. Like he didn't know what to do now that the truth was right in front of him. He left after 10 minutes. Didn't knock. Didn't speak. Just walked away. Jeremy was watching too. "They're falling apart," he said. "You took the one thing they were counting on and burned it right in front of them." "Good," I said. But a part of me still felt heavy. These were my children. My babies. Once upon a time, I had held them when they cried. Sang to them. Fed them when they were too small to hold a spoon. And now? Now they would have let me die if it meant getting paid faster. I sat at the kitchen table that night, lights off, listening to the ocean outside. I thought about the years I worked 2 jobs to keep the heat on. The nights I went hungry so they could eat. The way they looked at me in that hospital bed. Like I was a burden, like they couldn't wait to be free of me. My heart wanted to forgive. But my bones remembered. The next day, I made the final move. I called Mr. Dalton and asked him to meet me in person. We sat in his office, blinds drawn. "I want to change the will," I said. He raised his eyebrows. "You sure?" "Completely." I handed him the new version. Everything, every cent, every asset, every last dollar, would now go to charity. Half to a women's shelter in Southport. Half to a scholarship fund for kids with sick parents. He read through it in silence. When he finished, he nodded. "They'll be furious." "I know," I said. "They may try again." "Let them." He leaned forward. And what should I tell them when they come asking why? I smiled, small and tired. Tell them I left. Not just the town. Not just the money. Them. I left them. They had already left me once. When I needed them most. They abandoned me with a coldness that shattered every piece of trust one had left. Now it was my turn. They could live in the ruins they made. Brandon's trial came quick. Arson, trespassing, attempted assault. He cried in court. Said he was drunk. Said he was angry. Said he missed me. The judge didn't care. He got 5 years. Natalie and Scott didn't speak in public. But I knew what was happening behind the scenes. Rumors were spreading. People in Brook Hollow Park were starting to whisper. It wasn't just about the fake death notice anymore. It was about the kind of people they were. No one wanted to be friends with the kids who burned their mother's house down over money. Jeremy and I kept tabs from a distance. One day, he slid a laptop across the table. Check this out, he said. It was a social media video. Natalie. Sobbing. Sitting in her car. Talking into the camera. I don't know how things got this bad. I thought we were going to be okay. I thought we'd be together after everything. But it's like she vanished. And now Brandon's in jail. And everyone hates us. I didn't ask for this. The video had over 100,000 views. Most of the comments weren't on her side. Sounds like karma to me. Bet she's mad that inheritance didn't come through. You abandoned your mom and now you're crying? Boo-hoo. I closed the laptop. I didn't need to hear any more. My story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. I packed up the beach house a week later. Not because I was scared, but because it was time. Time to go somewhere new. Somewhere no one knew my name. Somewhere I could be Denise again. Not the mother they betrayed, not the ghost they tried to erase. Before I left, I walked the shoreline one last time. The waves were calm. The sky was pink with morning. And in the sand I left a note, tucked into a bottle, buried just deep enough that the next tide might carry it away. It read, "Be kind. You never know who's watching." I walked away, not looking back. Because revenge? Revenge was done. And I had already won.